Welcome to the Michigan Runner Show. Join us each time as we explore the people, the places, and the events that shape our great sport.
Hi, I'm Jennie McCafferty for the Michigan Runner, and we're in Flint at Bauman's Running and Walking Store with Mark Bauman, who owns the store, and he also is known as one of Michigan's, if not the United States, most prolific streakers. You probably hear that you're a streaker.
Well, but I was in college when there were streakers, so it brings back memories. Not of me, but of others.
Yeah, I can remember a few of those myself. I was not in them, I just watched. So, you started basically with the Boston Marathon, I believe, when you were just out of college?
No, I was in junior college at the time, yes. Yeah, 20 years old.
And among the people who were with you on that trip, was John Galt among them?
John Galt was there, but his knees were bothering, so he did not run.
He's still saying that, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So, how did that trip get started, and what on earth possessed a college runner to take on the Boston Marathon?
Well, I do not have a lot of leg speed, so I was running in college, but I was not one of the top runners on the track team. And the coach, Paul Griffin, he was planning on running the Boston Marathon and thought it would be a good idea if I trained with him, which gave him a training partner, and we went along.
Okay. So at that time, the training plans were perhaps a bit different. What was your training like that about?
Well, we gradually worked up to the 20-mile training run and did our long runs on Sunday. And our last long run was 20 miles the Sunday before Boston.
And that left you maybe a little bit less leg speed after all.
Well, who knows? I mean, you're 20 years old, you recover quick. And, a lot of it's psychological. And, in my mind, that's what I needed to do.
Boston Marathon. One of the things that people always wonder about is if Boston Marathon starts downhill, why is it so hard?
Boston Marathon is so hard because that downhill can beat you up. And then you get the hills, the Newton Hills, Newton Hills and Heartbreak Hill at the end of it, which can tire you out, tire your legs out. And then you get to the 21-mile mark, and there's a lot of downhill there. And if your legs are tired, sore at all, and you're going downhill, you're going to beat them up even more. So you can suffer after that if you don't run a smart race.
So you must have run a smart race because you kept going. You're still going. Since, what, 1974?
1970.
1970. 1970. That's a lot of Bostons.
That's a long time.
So the next one will be
Number 50.
number 50.
Yes.
And there's only one guy who's got as many Bostons as you do.
Yes, he's 2 ahead of me. Yeah. Yes.
2 ahead of you. Of course you would know that.
Yes.
Okay, a streak. Let's talk about that Boston streak a little bit. So you went back the next year.
Yes.
And the next year.
Yes.
When did you realize you had a streak?
It was probably 18, 20 years in. Started thinking, boy, I want to keep this going.
Yeah.
Schedule things around it.
Right.
Make sure that somebody didn't have this or that or the other thing planned at that time.
Okay, so you've been keeping it going, and the rules have changed. And one of the things that I think is kind of fascinating is you started running Boston before women were even allowed to run Boston.
Exactly.
Did you notice women when they started running?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, you would see a few women, and I was fast enough for a few years to be ahead of all the women. And I remember the first year that a woman caught me, and I was crashing, and I was probably 23 or 24 miles, whatever it was, and there were a ton of guys around her because they were the same as me. They didn't want to get beat by a woman, and I stayed with her I don't know how long, and as I recall, It was only a couple miles from the finish. She left me, and she probably beat me by 3 or 4 or 5 minutes.
Do you remember who it was? Do you remember who it was?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
But it's certainly a thing. I remember being in a race and talking to Paul Oftenberg about it afterwards, and he was crushed because it was the first time a woman ever had run past him.
He's very fast.
I know. So, was it a tough feeling that somebody ran faster?
Yeah, and I knew it was inevitable. It was going to happen, and it just became part of the scenery.
Well, the start times have changed, so the elite women started at different times. So, I'm not quite sure why that is, but it might make a difference to some guys who are not getting beat anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so they get a little attention. Otherwise, they get lost in the shuffle.
Oh yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
The early start,
Yeah.
and there were, at least one race in this area that had a early start for women years ago, and that was cool. Catching
Yeah.
women along the way. That was really nice.
So, there have to have been memorable weather days and memorable events, and you can't mention Boston without the year of the Boston bombing. And you were running with your son.
No, my son was there.
He was there.
He was there.
Okay.
My son and grandson
Okay.
were there.
Okay.
Yes.
And he happened to have the same name.
Yes, Jeffrey Bauman, the same name as
Yeah.
someone who lost 2 legs. Yes, that was.
must have caused quite a bit of confusion.
Oh, there was. Yes, there were a lot of phone calls. Yes, at that time. Yes.
What did you think?
Well, I didn't know anything about it at that time, because I knew he was safe before I had heard anything, because he found me stopped on the course.
Okay. Now you got stopped before you finished that
Yes,
day?
stopped
Okay.
at where the course goes under Mass Avenue,
Oh, wow.
which was a pinch point, which was
Yeah.
somebody thought really well to stop the race there.
Wow, that's interesting. So, and what did you think?
I had no idea what was going on, and it wasn't long after I was stopped. My son wasn't far from there, so he had found me.
Okay.
And he said he, thought it was a bombing because he was around the corner. And I said, "You sure that wasn't scaffolding falling, the noise?" He said, "No, people were running." And then, you start seeing ambulances.
Wow.
So then it kind of started sinking in. But in my mind, I stayed there for an hour and a half, one, trying to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
And then the other, my bag and cell phone had been checked.
Well, yeah, you probably had car keys or something.
Well,
Or hotel room keys, yeah.
Hotel room, all of that stuff
Yeah.
in my checked bag, as well as my cell phone, to call and say I'm okay, which he, was able to eventually do that anyway. But eventually they took us way around the back way, and we were able to get our bags.
Okay.
And this was probably an hour and a half to 2 hours after the bombing.
And after that, you hadn't actually crossed the finish line, but they gave you something. I mean,
Yeah,
they basically said, "Okay, it's official, you crossed."
Well, the race director said, "Hey, it's my race. I determine where the finish line is. That's where the
Okay.
finish line is."
Oh,
That's what he said at
Okay.
the time, anyway.
okay. Yikes. So, did you go home that day or stay over?
No, we stayed over. I don't think you could have got out of town
Oh,
very late. I think I'm guessing the airport's closed down too, didn't they?
don't remember.
Or Boston was closed down, so you probably couldn't get to
Right,
the airport
right.
even.
Yeah.
But we stayed near the finish line, and we're not able to get out to get any food, so we were just eating munchies that we had in the room.
Oh, wow.
The hotel, by the time we got back, was sold out of food.
Yeah.
The restaurant in the
Lucky
hotel.
to have had one by then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yikes.
And our hotel was, open. It wasn't quarantined or,
Whew.
I mean, you couldn't get in into a lot of places. We did go right after we got the bag. We went into a store to get warm, and then we got kicked out of there because they said they're evacuating the store and the whole mall
Wow.
around Boston. So we walked,
wow.
a long way around the back roads to get back to our hotel.
Whew. So that has to be a memorable one, but there must have been some happier ones,
Oh yeah, there was some,
especially the one you ran 2:30:32.
2:30:32. Yes, that was a great day. Yes.
Like?
Oh, that was, I mean, you're just flying high running that fast. At that time, 2 hours and 30 minutes was Olympic trials qualifying.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, ooh, I've got to have a good chance. And a month or two later, they dropped it to 2:24.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I hate when that happens, exactly. But I was 120th place with 2 hours and 30 minutes at Boston Marathon, and most of them were Americans. So they were thinking that's
Yeah.
just too many people in the trials.
Yeah. Oh, so close. So, but still, what a remarkable time.
It was, yeah, you'd fly high for a long time after that. Yes, you do.
Do you remember what year that was?
That was 1975.
Do you remember what the weather was like?
Oh, it's great weather. Oh, yeah. It was super weather.
Okay. So when you talk to people who are not runners, their idea of a good runner is 80. But for runners, that's not true. What is your idea of perfect running weather?
Well, perfect running weather for me would be high 30s, low 40s, and basically no sun, no wind.
One of the things that's very interesting is that at some point you started supplying buses for Boston runners to go, I think, from downtown somewhere to the start line?
Yes.
What's that
yes.
story?
Well, years ago, late 80s, 90s, up through the 100th, there was what was called a Michigan House in
right.
Hopkinton that Doug Curtis had going. And basically it was people from Michigan. We'd crash in her house. And after the 100th, she kind of, was getting older and decided not to do it anymore. And somehow, like the next year out there, we're kind of wandering around, and I run across these buses there. And I started asking questions what they are, and they were club buses.
I see.
And so the next year, I contacted the BAA to get a permit for the bus and a charter company out there to charter a bus, and then I started doing buses with the Riverbend Striders, and been doing it since. Yeah, there's no way to stop it. I think I'd be lynched if I stopped it.
How many buses do you have now?
Well, this past 2 years, we had 4 buses with
Wow.
50-plus people in each bus.
Are they mostly Michigan or all Michigan? Or?
Mostly Michigan people, yeah.
Or people who moved away and knew about it?
Right, and or
Yeah.
people moved away or had a family member or friend, or like a sales rep will say, hey, can I get a couple people from headquarters on the bus? Sure.
There must be some great camaraderie on those buses.
Oh, yeah, we have a great time, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because you have to get out there fairly early, so you're just sitting around on a charter bus with our own bathroom and, just waiting for your turn to start.
So you're inside, it's warm or cold, whatever the opposite of the weather is.
Right, exactly.
Very cool. So there you go. You have to pay attention if you're running Boston.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Very cool. So there you go. You have to pay attention if you're running Boston.
Yes, and they're like last year, a week and a half out, there were probably 20 seats left on the buses. And as the weather forecast started coming in, boy, those seats disappeared fast. So some people,
Yeah.
will say, well, I want to do the natural experience out there. Well, fine, but then when the weather changes, people change their mind.
So you must have run in some interesting, tough weather.
Yes. In 76, they say it was 100 degrees on the course. I ran 15 minutes slower than the year before and finished 8 places further back.
Wow.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
heat, and
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
people
hot.
dropped out. Yes.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
hot.
2:18 or 19 was a winning time in 76. And 2:10 the year before.
Slow. Yeah.
Yes.
That's, well, slow. Slow
Yeah.
for those guys.
Slow for those guys, yes.